Everything you see is built out of rock, so it's really difficult to understand how things look like in the past. So instead of trying to imagine it, like they built the whole thing. We all go through the same or very similar internal transformations. We all look for purpose in life. We all look for meaning in things. We all have emotional connections with people, and we all look for validation from our peers. And one of the sad realities of everybody is that we all die. Now, whenever we die, there's grief, and in that grief is where you bury the people that you find valuable in a useful way. All of these sites that you see, like they have platforms with statues, these are all burial sites, right? Each one of these statues is supposed to be representing a person that had a name, had a life, represented something for the community at the time, right? The word moai in Rapa Nui again is the noun for statue, right? So any statue of any material for any kind of reason is a moai. It's an umbrella term that would have to cover up the fact that we don't know the names of these people anymore, right? Now, this is the condition in which we live right now. Up until today, the oldest human trace anyone has ever found, up until now, dates to be on average about 1,000 years old. So we know for sure that people have been living on this island for 1,000 years. Now, ever since day one up until today, 2025, we've all been technically living on top of each other this entire time, right? Every single generation that ever occupied this place built something on top of it, and another thing, another thing. So what you guys are seeing here is not really a picture in time, right? Even if the places are reconstructed, right? What you guys are really seeing here is whatever it is that the last generation of people that lived in here decided to do with the rocks that you see over there, right? So here's the thing. We as humans are abstract creatures. We treat things, we behave around things not because of what they are, but because of what they mean to us, right? Now this is the example I always give, and this is the exercise I want you to try to do, right? All of these pillars are all statues, right? So they were all standing, and when you see them, they're all face planting the floor, so they were all looking in, right? Now I want you to do this exercise. Let's say you know the first person, that was buried here, Let's say every time you look at this piece of rock, it reminds you of that person, all the memories, all that thing. Let's say you can see that person reflected on that piece of rock. How are you going to behave around that rock if that's the case? With whatever respect you have for that person, right? Now, let's say on the other hand, you stand in front of the same piece of rock, you don't really recognize any of those things that I just told you. Like, you don't know it's a burial site, you don't know that's a person, the only real thing you see is that that's a piece of rock. How are you going to treat that piece of rock? Like, whatever piece of rock, right? So maybe whenever I see my grandfather in one of these, somebody down the line saw a water trough in that piece of rock. Or maybe a foundation of a house in that piece of rock. And grab the same material and use it for something more useful at a time. Now, this is the difficult bit because you never know which piece of rock it's 1,000 years old or which one was just built like maybe 100 years ago, right? And that's where my job comes in. My job is to help you understand why people build things, but also what rocks are what. If you just come here and just look at this place, this is just a whole bunch of rocks, right? Now look, here people pretty much divided the material in two ways. One is through the hardness of the material, right? The harder rock, people use it for building structures and tools, and the softer material, people left it for decoration. The statues, I don't know if you can tell the color of the rock, but it has this like brownish, almost like yellowish hue of color to it. And it's also very grainy, and that's because that's the softest material you can find on this island. There's only one place on this island that's made out of pure ash and water mixed. So it's essentially just cement that naturally occurs, right? People, through a process of trying different rocks, eventually reached that wall and said, hey, you know what, this is the best rock ever, so we're gonna focus the work on that spot, right? The red pieces of rock, again, that's hair, right? Tied up in a knot at the top of your head. People in the past dressed in a way that showed off their social status, not your own personal liking. Today you dress according to how you express yourself, but in the past was to show off who you are. So by just looking at people, their decorations, tattoos and everything, you will already know if you have a social sympathy. Like if you got royal tattoos and I don't, and we see each other, I already know, like how far we are each other from socially speaking, right? In the old days, the groups of royalty used to do two things: elongate their earlobes, right? Because that was an accessory that only royal people used to have. And also, they will let their hair grow. People believed in the past in a concept that we call mana, which is essentially spiritual power. People believed that the royal king and its royal family were the closest things to the gods on earth. So naturally, they're the people that hold all the spiritual power. It's passed down generationally by bloodline. And the firstborn is supposed to be the next leader. So that's how, socially speaking, people structured themselves. It was essentially a monarchy, right? So the firstborn gets to be the next king or queen, and so on and so forth. Now, people believe that that spiritual power, it was called in their skull. So any decorations on their head were a good thing. People let their hair grow thinking that that will show off power, and they will die with red dirt because red color is spiritual power, right? Now, eventually, whenever people die, all those accessories that they had in life, they were added to their pieces. So any decorations you see on a statue, top knots, ear piercings, or carvings on the back, were all, for one, accessories that would add it over the years, but for another thing that people wore in real life. Roger. I know I'm talking a lot. Go around, have some pictures, right? And then we're gonna go and move back to the village over there because I see that. Just so you have an idea of chronology and how we understand the events up until now, the earliest settlements maybe the year 800 AD, the year 1000 AD, so people push it to 1000, maybe 1200 years old, the oldest settlements. As soon as people arrived, people looked for resources. They divided themselves into tribes, right? Fresh water was the main thing, so everywhere you go along the platform, you're always going to find caves with fresh water. If our cave is next to the ocean, we're gonna do fishing. If it's next to fertile land, we're gonna do agriculture. If it's next to a hill that has a specific material, we're gonna work that material around. So basically what I'm saying is that the quality of the resources you see on the place and the quality of the carvings, meaning how many decorations, how well done, how big the place is, goes hand in hand, you know? Because I could be the king of the island, but if you guys hold the biggest pool of fresh water, what power do I really have, or what control do I have over you? Now, the Mennonite period, where all of these big things were all carved, is somewhere between the 11 and the 1600s, as far as we understand. So from like the 12th up until the 16th century, 17th century, is how we understand that all of these carvings happened. And that's when people got isolated, right? Tribal conflicts happened, people toppled down the stuff.
This is a chicken coop.
Potato, chicken. Oh, yeah, great.
I'm now inside an old Easter Island shelter. The first king of Rapa Nui.
Or somewhere around. Meaning what? Meaning that regardless of the distance covered and the size of the statue, the idea that any of us would have gotten one of these statues completely finished was very low, because of the overall amount, less than 25% of all of the statues made it to the final destination. Right now it's here, right? Like the airport is here, the runway goes across this side, and right now we're around this side on the island. This side of the coast, this coast on the island, like the one that we're driving through right now, is the longest coast on the island, right? This is 25 kilometers. According to oral tradition, whenever the first king of the island died, he was buried in this place, right? And the disposition of his burial site was supposed to be like in a way that it divided the land into two, right? Whenever he died, he essentially gave all the royal tribes to his eldest son and all the rest of the tribes to his youngest son. In order to make that division, he was supposed to be a division between the middle of the coast of the island up to the highest point, right? And anything from here to this side, all these tribes are royal tribes, and all these other tribes are non-royal tribes. On the island, we have these two lineages that divide into different, like, mata, that's called in Rapa Nui, or tribes, right? There's 18 tribes in total, right? The lowest amount of population ever recorded was in 1888, and there were 111 people. So from those 111 people is where all the rest of the Rapa Nui people come from, right? Two things happen here, and I want you to take into account that this is not really up to scale, but on the island we have three villages that we call foundational villages, right? One of them is this one, right? Akahanga, because this is the burial site of the first king. The other one, it's another place called Anakena, which is the main beach of the island, right? Which is on this side of the island. And the other one is called Ahutepeu, which is near the cave area. If we had a satellite picture of the island, these three villages are equidistant between each other, right? And these are all like royal villages. The idea was this. These were the perspectives of the alignments of some archaeological sites. I don't know if you've read or seen that some archaeological sites are aligned with the solstices and the equinox, right? The solstice is the longest day of the year and the equinox is the shortest day of the year. So naturally, this is how it works. If you stand in Akahanga, in spring, the sun sets in Orongo, which is the place where people used to perform the birthday ceremony, right? Marking the beginning of the spring. Throughout the year, it moves around up until in winter, it arrives in Ahutepeu from this perspective, right? This is the shortest day of the year, and whenever the coldest weather starts beginning, right? And it's the same on the other side for the sunrise. In summer, in the 21st of December, the sun rises behind the 15 statues, and that's why people go see the sunrise over there, right? And in winter time, it's on nearby Anakena, if you stand from this perspective. Now, here's the issue. These sites are not visible from each other, meaning if you stand here, you cannot see the sunset here, you cannot see the sunset here. Like this are grand scale stuff. These are all studies done with satellite images, right? So a lot of people still argue that maybe some of it is real and some of it isn't. We personally believe it's real, and I personally believe it's real, and most importantly, that's the control of the royal tribes. Because the control of the royal tribes was not to live where all the good things are at, but to control the people that use them. So in order to know, like if you're from a fishing village, I'll tell you when to go fishing, when not to. If you guys are doing crops, I'll tell you when and when not to. If you guys are doing this, the same thing. So the royal tribes were pretty much in charge of doing the calendar about the year, right? All of this knowledge stems from navigation, right? That's the original like prototype of technology that led to like alignments like this. People knew things about the stars while sailing away, and they just repurposed that knowledge into something more useful, right? All right, my TED talk is over. I have no more lies to tell you about this. Let's go out, and we're gonna go to the quarry now, right? Which is arguably a place that you really want to be at. I know it looks disgusting.
Is it good?
No. I mean, it's not bad. It's not the best.
I've eaten worse.
Yeah.
Can I try it?
Have you ever eaten custard apple?
Yeah. It looks a bit like the seeds.
Oh,
Look
yeah.
similar to like.
Although this is already wrong. Like the idea is not to get it when it's right.
Yeah.
The rollover. It doesn't taste much? Like anything?
No. It's alright though.
It's very milky. These four rocks here are all the same, right? These are all basaltic rocks, right? Here, naturally, you find them in two ways. Either vesiculated basalt. Vesiculated because all these little things, all these vesicles there were bubbles of air. So this cooled off in the atmosphere, and this is the most common material you see everywhere. All the fences, pretty much all the foundations are made out of this. And this is the same thing that cools off on a deeper layer. So all the bubbles of air just compress, and it's a solid piece of rock, right? This eventually turns into this, if you shave it really well. More than 10,000 tools have been found just in this place, right? This is a sample of a tool, but like bigger tools, smaller tools, some of them are thicker, some thinner, because like the idea is to cover different types of job, right? And this is the same as this, but just polished by the ocean. You know how like pebbles in the river get rounded by the water erosion? This is the same thing, but on a bigger scale. This is the statue material, and the idea of not touching moai is because this material is super brittle. It doesn't take much pressure in order to sort of like break things apart and pieces apart of it, right? This is obsidian. Some of the pupils of the eyes and some ear piercings have been found made out of this material. This is very sharp and wide edge, so like mostly for cutting tools, right, and shaving. And this is the top knot material. This is very lightweight, right? And this is red because it has a high content of iron in its composition, and the fact that it's just exposed to the atmosphere just oxidizes it, right? Top knots. Now this thing right here, can anybody guess what this could be? Close. I'm gonna give you a clue. This was alive at some point in time.
A skull. A snail. A snail.
Anybody else? This was alive. This is coral. Dead coral. This is how it looks like, right? And dead coral is what was used for the eyes. On the island, only one eye was found. It was found broken in half. Although many pieces of coral have been found around like the platforms, only one with the shape of an eye was ever found, right? Now again, I can tell you that this rock is 3 million years old, but that doesn't mean that the carving in it will be that old. So I want you to use the same exercises I told you before in order to understand how old these pieces are. The bigger, the more unified the model and the extra accessories, the newer they are. The simpler the rock, the simpler the carving, the more human-like the face, the older it is, right? We have 500 years of carving stuck in this world. Now, I just want to point one thing out. All of the pictures of statues that you see covered with dirt halfway over are from this place. All of the statues have been sitting here for 500 years, meaning that the statue around it, the sediment is growing little by little, right? So if you want to know how big a statue is, just multiply the size of the head by 3 and you get an average idea. All of these statues have been excavated, but they covered everything back up because the dirt vacuum seals everything on the ground. So all the details are really well done on the ground, right? That's pretty much it. Now again, I'll ask you to stay within the trail limit. We're not going to walk 24 kilometers back and forth every day just to come here to carve, right? So what we understand that people did in a place like this is that different carvers from different places around the island moved into this place, right? And whoever set this place up, they became like the carving tribe, right? So they lost identification with the other tribes and then just became the religion. But hear me out. If you use this point as a center point, you see how all the statues are spread around the island? Everything makes sense. All the biggest and the most amount of statues are either at the quarry or somewhere close. The biggest statue that was ever carved is still attached to the wall. We're going to see it in a little bit, right here. Half of all of the statues that we know of are still in this place, right? From platforms, the most amount of statues in one platform is the 15 statues. It is right around the corner from this place. The place where we were before has 13 statues. The next one has 8, and the last one has 7. Right? So the further away you get from this wall, on average you see less statues, smaller, and further away from each other. Because moving an 80-ton piece of rock from here to the coastline is easier than moving it, all these statues were found. Those were all found in places that are very inaccessible from those places down to the quarry. So people that lived in places that were pretty impossible to get from the quarry would rather use their own local materials, right? Because the entire point of making a statue is not the material, it's to get the statue up, regardless. So if it's hard material, well, so be it. If it's quality, well, so be it. But the important thing is to have a statue up.
So if you look just below the chin of this moai, it was likely stopped being carved due to the fact there's a big rock sticking out, and it would either cause a hole in it or an imperfection, so they stopped carrying on with the carving of it. This moai statue has been to Japan and back for a world fair in the 1980s. This is what the statues look like from a side angle, all in line. And the statues in this area were originally washed away by a tsunami and repurposed into their current position.
What's the name of the rock?
It's called Pitokura, right? And there's people associate all these ideas of magnetism to it because at some point in time, somebody brought a magnetic compass. And if you put a magnetic compass on top of the rock, it loses its true north. And the whole logic behind that is it has to be repelled, right? And according to some people, this is a magnetic center of some kind. It's 4:15 enough time, like an hour and a half, 15 minutes, I think. Yeah, you can have, yeah. So, like, we're gonna give you some free time now, right? Because this is a public space, right?
So I'm about to get into the Pacific Ocean for the first time ever, and I'm somewhere halfway between South America and Australia on Easter Island at Anakena Beach. Let's give it a go.